Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lundquist Real Estate Podcast. I'm John Lundquist. I'm here today with Tisha Strickler. Tisha, you want to say hello to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
So today we're going to talk about a topic that comes up quite a bit. People not knowing how to pick their realtor and how they, should choose the right person. There's a lot of people that don't have a friend or family member in the real estate industry, and they're looking, or even if they do, for whatever reason, they're looking for the one that's going to work best with them. So I figured we'd just talk a little bit about how we would pick and what we've seen and give you guys some advice. Tisha, is there anything you want to start off with?
Well, just like every person, every realtor is completely different, and it makes it either easier or harder for some clients to choose the right realtor. I think the biggest thing that clients need to understand or need to think about is what meshes well with them. You and I personally have been over this many, many times as far as how we do documents and things. Your and I's styles are pretty similar, but how I mesh with my clients and how you mesh with your clients are two totally different things.
Oh, sure. Personality plays a lot into it. It's like any other, thing where you're doing it with a group of people or, personal interaction. It doesn't matter what it is. Personality and that meshing with, someone else's is a big. And a salesman who's not true to their personality, no matter what, is going to come off fake.
Yes.
It just doesn't work. So you've got to be yourself, and that's going to work better with some clients than others. But as a realtor, how do you try to mesh with the widest group of people, no matter what?
Honestly, I try really hard making it an experience, connecting with that person. If they tell me they've got a dog named Fido and I remember that from the conversation, I may bring up Fido as we're sitting down doing paperwork to calm
So you
the
just
situation.
truly connect to the individual and, remember things about them, not only pertaining to the real estate transaction, but them personally, and just try to give them a good experience.
Yes.
Okay. Would you say most realtors try to accomplish that same thing, just in their own way or style?
I would say probably yes, most do.
Yeah. I think some are just naturally a little more to the point, and others are maybe a little more open with conversation. A lot of new agents, there's different comfort zones depending on how long you've been doing this, how long you've been working with people, maybe not just in real estate. But you've got to mesh well with your client. You've got to make sure they're enjoying their time that they spend with you.
I would totally agree with that.
Okay. How would you advise a client to pick their realtor? Just strictly off of performance or strictly off of, I know a lot of people that I can have a great time with on Saturday that I'm not going to have lead me into my largest purchase in life. How would you advise them?
I think a big thing is, it goes to how well you're meshing with them, but how hard is that person going to work for you? I think there's a misconception that realtors go and open the door for you and walk you through a house and that's their job. Our jobs are so much more than opening the door for a showing. Paperwork, bringing deals together with other agents. I think that it's almost as important that your agent gets along with other agents as it is that they get along with the clients.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really think your agent needs to be knowledgeable in what they're doing, whether it's the contracts and the paperwork, or some advice on the lending process, that just enough to guide people through all aspects of the purchase or the sale. But I definitely think that they need to be professional and easy to contact. They need to be easy to work with the other competing real estate agents around that they may be working with to put the sale together. They need to know the title companies. They need to probably know a lot of the local lenders, and have no problem having a productive conversation with these people to efficiently get someone to the purchase or the closing table.
I also would say that if you're sitting down with a realtor, that realtor, whether you're listing or purchasing, they should be able to sell themselves to you on what they actually do. And it's not just opening a door for a showing.
How about experience? I mean, everybody thinks that, they want the most experienced agent, this and that. I mean, I know some extremely good young agents who have more time, who will go to further lengths, that'll run all over the place. So do you think that experience plays into it?
I think that the experience of the realtor, or the willingness of that realtor to be able to seek out help. Mm-hmm. I remember when I very, very first started into the business, no, I didn't have a ton of real estate experience. However, I was surrounded by a office full of very experienced realtors. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I know all of the answers right off the bat. That's not how it works. But I could go to you or Bob or anybody else that was sitting in the office for that help. So do I think that experience plays into it? Absolutely. But if a young agent doesn't necessarily have that experience, who's in the background helping that agent get through the process?
Sure. So it's about not only what they already know, but what their team looks like, and how well and how efficient they can get those answers for you.
Absolutely.
Sure, I agree with that. And I don't think that there's anything to the fact of an old experienced agent not making time for a certain caliber of buyer or a certain type of seller. I honestly think that is a personal trait amongst different salespeople. I don't think that how long they've been in the business really dictates that.
I don't either.
So, experience or the availability to what they don't know is definitely key.
Well, and the ability to, if you don't know the answer, I'm going to go get that answer and I will let you know. There's a lot, I've ran into a lot of agents working in this industry for 8 years that I feel like they would rather get hit by a car than go ask for help, because they're just no, I know it all. I learn something new every day. I don't know it all, but I know where to get the answer.
Sure. And I would tell buyers especially, well, even sellers for listings, I'd tell everybody that's seeking out a real estate professional for help that they do not have to just call the name on the sign. They do not have to go with their friend or, someone that was referred to them. And they should look into some Google reviews. They should look at what this agent puts out there as far as their own track record. This is a referral business, and it always will be, and that's a biggie. And you should, but ask the right people. Ask the people that you trust for who they would refer. And I definitely think that you should, I don't know if you want to go as formal as an interviewing process or not. That's up to you. But I think you should talk to a couple realtors. Don't just take the first one that the online lead generates you directly to and think you're stuck with them, and don't think that you get the same service from everyone.
I want to go back to what you were saying about calling the name on the sign. I actually literally just ran into this. It is a huge misconception with a lot of more buyers than sellers. But if I have a house listed and Tisha Strickler's sign is sitting in the front of the house, that does not mean that you just have to call Tisha Strickler because her name is on the sign. Tisha Strickler can show you any property in the state of Indiana legally, but they have a misconception of if I'm not working with somebody, I just have to call the name that's on that sign, and that isn't necessarily the case.
No, not at all. And another thing would be that in some, like in our area, a lot of us, we will help you sell your current home and transition straight into a buyer's agent role and help you buy your next one.
Absolutely.
But in some areas, there's teams, and you've got buyer specialists, seller specialists, within these teams, and they may hand you off to other people. I think that you need to keep your main point of contact. If there's someone in that team that is going to help you with the next portion of this that you can't communicate well with, you need to go back to the person you did entrust in and say, hey, I have a problem. I want this taken care of. Talk to your agents. We work for you. We're here to advise, but you've got to be able to communicate with who you're working with and speak up if there's a problem. With buyer broker agency forms and, all these other things, listing contracts that can lock you in for months sometimes with a specific realtor. You want to do this diligence ahead of time.
Absolutely.
I've heard a lot of people say I'm not happy for various reasons. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't. But the bottom line is they're not happy with who they're working with, but they're already under contract. And sometimes it's hard to get out of that. And now they're stuck. And in a situation that everybody's trying to salvage instead of just keep a good one. And so do that diligence ahead of time. Talk to several people, and then find the right person and take off from there.
And as far as the reviews, I mean, the public uses those reviews. Heck, if I'm getting ready to go to a new place for dinner, I'm Googling it, seeing what the reviews are. If they're terrible, I'm like, maybe we shouldn't go there. But if they've got amazing reviews, yeah, I'm going to continue to go on. Also, if I'm looking at some place that has 2 reviews and then somebody else has 100 reviews, which one of those reviews is going to hold more weight?
Yeah, I mean, in today's day and age, everybody goes online. And if you are a fantastic realtor who does not make time to have an online presence of any kind, that doesn't make time to have any kind of good review, whether it's a Google review on a website or whether it's just through social media, you're selling yourself short. That's
Absolutely.
Where consumers go. And if that realtor isn't there, I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of good realtors that don't make time to do that, but as the consumer, how are you supposed to know?
Exactly.
So, they should do their diligence a little better.
I mean, everybody's getting them. I just got a text message this morning from taking my daughter to the orthodontist yesterday that was asking for a Google review. And on the flip side of checking those reviews, if your agent sends you a review, it's something that they're really asking you to do for this purpose.
Yeah, I guess, a little bit off of the topic, once you've gotten a realtor that you've been happy with or not happy with, and they ask you for a review and send you the link, take time to fill it out. It doesn't take long. The ones we use are just a text message that you just type in and send back. But those not only help us get more work, but the big picture is it helps tell the consumer who to pick, who they're going to have a good transaction with. And without it, today it's hard to find somebody without those reviews.
Absolutely.
But
although we see quite a few of them.
Oh yeah, sure we do.
That have none.
Yeah. And things are changing in the commission worlds and everything else. There's a lot of things changing minimally. It's not changing how the process goes. It's changing how we have to do some paperwork and how some things can be negotiated. But all the same options are available for how you pick your agent, you know, what's important to you. Yeah, and it's not, a lot of times it's not what most people think it is.
How do you feel about, let's say you have you're moving into our area, if you will, from Muncie, Fort Wayne. What do you think those people that are moving from those areas need to think about when moving into the area as far as the agent that they're using?
I mean, if you don't already know a lot about the area that you're relocating and purchasing in, then you've got to have an agent that helps get the information you need. You know, we are real estate experts. We may not be experts on school districts or on the best shopping, but we can give you the resources to where you can make that decision on your own a lot easier. We can get you in front of the right people. We can get you the right contact information. You know, we may not be able to tell you, hey, you definitely want this school district versus that school district, but we can get you the tools you need to make that decision for yourself much easier. And if your realtor's not willing to do that for you, it's hard to purchase a home coming into a new area and not know any of these things ahead of time. You know, you can do the research you want online, but ask your realtor for that advice. You know, they may not specifically say it, but they'll get you some local avenues to double check what you've already found online. And in some small rural areas, you may not find much online. You've got to go to some local avenues and decide for yourself.
How about the willingness of the realtor that you're working with to literally just refer you to a local agent?
So, you know, there's always been a debate. If you're moving from another area and you want to keep the same realtor that you worked with selling your house there, maybe, there's always been the debate on whether that's a good choice. I'm not going to say one way or the other specifically every time. I mean,
No.
If you've got a good agent who you really like, who works super hard for you and is willing to travel, and they're not only willing to travel, but they're not just traveling down into an area they don't know and opening doors for you, but they're actually doing the research on the neighborhoods, the values, getting you that advice for local schools, districts, and other things that are important. If they're doing all that legwork, then, you know, they're probably a good fit. But if they're just willing to drive down on Saturday and open the door and they're leaving the rest of it up to you, you know, even if you are very loyal to that friend and realtor from your other area, there are referral fees. There is a process where you can refer that client to a realtor in that new local zip code or area who you have done some research on to find out, you know, whether they have a pretty good track record, and you're still going to be able to give that realtor in that other region a small kickback for that referral. And then they hand you off to someone that knows more about the area you're going than they do. I think one or the other has to happen, but it's important. By one means or another, it's important to get the person that is going to give you the most knowledge about the place you're buying. You know, some realtors think the referral fee process needs to be 100% done all the time like a golden rule. Some think that it doesn't matter at all. I really think that as long as the same thing's being accomplished, either can work. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But just you as the consumer, you know, it's just like when you hire a contractor or anything else, we're working for you. You know, don't be silent, ask questions, inform, so we know what you want, and so you know really quickly whether or not we're going to do that for you or not. And if not, find somebody that's going to. So that's kind of as good of an answer as I can say on that one. What do you think about, you know, working with an agent that's trying to make things simple, but also pushing you to go to a certain route. Whether that be advise you to lenders or give you, multiple options, of course, but nobody doing anything below board, but that has this one-stop shopping type of mentality versus someone who just lets you pick but helps you along the way.
Well, I personally, when working with them, obviously I give them the multiple options to choose from, and I let them pick. But a lot of clients, I could give my clients 3 home inspector names for a home inspection. And I would say 95% of the time, they're still going to come back and say, okay, but who would you call?
We can't really go any further than that, though.
No, we can't, as far as we can't drive anybody to anything. But I think that their willingness, your agent's willingness to be helpful in those. Okay, so if we're doing home inspectors and I give you 3 home inspectors names, okay, this guy will do this, this, and this, and his reports are always this, and I always have him back. Knowing the entity that you are referring out to those and how that process is going to work,
sure,
I think is very important too. If I've got a home inspector that 95% of the time has the report back to me the very next morning, and I know, okay, we can work we'll have it back at this point and we'll be able to. So being able to know the entities that you're referring to your clients well enough to know, okay, this is how it's going to work with this guy, and this is how it's going to work with this guy, and this is how it's going to work with this guy, is a huge help to them. If you're in a time crunch on doing inspections, knowing that this guy is going to have it back to you the next morning and this guy is going to have it back to you within 4 days is going to be a huge thing for your buyers or your sellers.
I mean, I don't refer anybody that I can't vouch for.
Right.
And if I can't vouch for anyone in that specific, request, then I'll give them the info that I can come up with, and I'll tell them I don't know anything personally about them. I've never worked with any of them, but this is what I found. I hate when I have to do that.
But that happens, at least in my experience, that happens very little that we know nothing about the person. So I guess it would raise a red flag to me if your realtor is looking at you and saying, well, I don't know anything about any of these guys. I mean, did you work with them or did you not?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I guess on the listing side, we kind of started talking about, things for examples for buyers, but how should sellers pick a realtor?
On that, there's a lot of key components that go into your listing that makes it appealing or not. I think for me personally, after being in the business, if I was a seller personally, and I wasn't for whatever reason going to sell my own house, and I was interviewing others, okay. My first pause of the day. I think a big part of it for me is that realtor transparent with everything that they are saying to me. If I'm going to a listing appointment and it's the very first time I've met these people at this point, I am not shooting from the hip throwing you a price in the market that we're in. Are they prepared? How are they going to come to the price? Interview a couple of people, if you will, because we're all going to do it differently. I personally am probably not going to hire an agent that's just walking into my house and saying, okay, where do you want to list it? That's not doing the due diligence to your clients in any way, shape, or form. So I'm walking into an appointment, gathering information and saying, okay, I'm going to go back to the office, and I'm going to pull comparable sales, and I'm going to pull our competition that's on the market right now, and I'm going to be able to show you those numbers. If the realtor that you're interviewing, if you will, can't show you how they came to the value of your home, that's a red flag to me.
Sure. Well, and I think a lot more than that, your realtor needs to be able to tell you how they plan on marketing your home.
Absolutely.
Give you some advice on what you may or may not want to prioritize on prior to the professional photos being done, prior to everything hitting on the market.
Is that realtor even offering professional photos?
Sure. There's a whole different list sometimes that your realtor will advise you to do versus what you think your home still needs.
Right.
I think that would be the same for my own home. A new set of eyes that knows what the market wants, what's important to buyers, where to spend your time or maybe a little bit of money if necessary. You may not be able to come up with that list on your own.
No.
And what needs a coat of paint or this or that before the appraiser gets there for loan types. These things are important. And a realtor that is confident in that list and can advise on those things can show you where your money's being spent for that commission. What kind of advertising is going to be involved, what caliber of photos are going to be included. Whether or not they're willing to do open houses, even in regions where open houses don't work the best, have that conversation and get that explanation to make sure it makes sense. Just make sure that they show you their value and where your money's going. You could be on the hook for 3 to 6 months with that realtor and that realtor's company. And the next one's probably charging very similar to or if not the same amount. You want to make sure you're getting someone who you've pulled up other listings that they have and there's a good, thorough description.
I was just going to touch on descriptions.
Not just a one-line sentence. And, you are the consumer. What are you getting for your money?
If in my opinion, a description of a real estate of a property in real estate in our MLS is supposed to sell that home. If I see an agent that's got a whole bunch of one-line descriptions that say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in a nice neighborhood, that didn't sell that house to me at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a listing description can have a maximum of 2,000 words?
I think.
And we're allowed 30 some photos.
36.
Why in the world is there a listing with one sentence and 3 pictures?
Exactly.
And the realtor's in the background of the mirror in the third one. That's just, if you're paying the same amount, what do you want for your money? And if it's not satisfactory, have a realtor who's willing to make it better or fix it for you. We're the experts at getting this done efficiently and trying to get you the best price for your home, but we are absolutely working for you. And that's the mentality that should be taken to it.
Absolutely.
At the same time, if you're interviewing several realtors, should you just pick the one that tells you what you want to hear?
No, absolutely not. You and I have discussed this a lot sitting around the office. But again, if that agent is doing their due diligence and doing their work, if you want $300,000 for your house, but every comparable sale that I have pulled says that it's that we could list it for $280, you're gonna find a realtor that will market your house at $300,000. What you're not probably going to be very happy with is the months that it takes for that property to sell in the market that we're in, if it's overpriced. And chances are it's still going to sell at that $280,000 mark that the agent that did their homework.
Well, and I will say this, I've said it 1,000 times. It doesn't matter if you lower price. It doesn't matter if you change real estate companies and get a different sign in the front yard. You're only a new listing once.
Yep.
Unless you're going to retract and stay there for another several years and then do it again, in that window of time that you're shooting for to sell your home, you're only a new listing once.
Yep.
And so nobody wants to leave money on the table that they could have gotten. However, you do not want to be so overpriced that you can't get any action at all and miss that window of opportunity and then end up taking a lower price because of market time working against you.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. The marketing time in that can be huge. I mean, if you, going back to the example that I said earlier, if you're gung-ho that you're going to sell this house for $300,000 and your agent is like, okay, we can try it, but I don't think that's where that's going to go. I don't think that's where it's going to land. You're going to have to be willing to drop that price within so many days. You're going to have to be willing to do what your agent is asking you to do, because I can think of properties right now that are on the market that I'm like, wow, I can't believe that's still sitting there. And the housing shortage that we're sitting at.
A house staying on the market doesn't always mean it's because of the price.
Not always, but what I am saying is a lot of the time in the market that we're in right now, it is the price is a huge portion of it because it started grossly overpriced. Sure. Well, now every time, no matter how much you're dropping it, those buyers are now looking at it and they're saying, why has this house been on the market 180 days? What's wrong with it?
Right.
That is exactly what they're saying.
It could cost you money.
Yes.
It could force you to take a lower price because you started too high.
Yes.
And that's just the reality of it. There is some truth to, hey, we can start here and try it for a while, but there's a limit to how high you can do that.
Yep.
Before it starts working against you.
Mm-hmm.
You need a realtor that can explain that to you and in a way that works, but you also need to be open and prepared for that conversation. The one that's going to tell you what they want to hear, I honestly think most of the time they're just trying to get signs in the yard at any cost, or they're not experienced enough to explain to you something that they know that you're not going to be excited about.
Yep.
And they're so worried about the experience that they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to upset you. And, you called us because we're the expert. Sometimes the truth isn't what you wanted to hear, as long as it's brought to you correctly and there's information to back it up. That is where the knowledge is, not just the one that told you anything that you wanted to hear. It can work bad for you. And honestly, that realtor didn't do their homework, or if they did, they just simply were not willing to present it to you. Both, in my opinion, should be questioned.
Absolutely.
And even though we try to do a little bit of everything, the best realtor to sell your house may not be the best realtor to sell you your recreational property or your commercial property or whatever the case may be. If you don't think that the realtor you have is the expert for the type of purchase or sale that you're getting ready to be involved in, it's not bad to say, hey, I'm jumping to this other person for this, and the next time I need to buy a house, I'll be back.
Right.
It may not always be the exact same person. Just do your diligence, do your homework, and make sure that you can have these conversations with your realtor and get the explanations you need. And no one's getting an attitude. No one's upset about being questioned about it. Make sure that there's a good working relationship. You might be working with this person for months.
Right.
It has to work well. No, that's about all I can really say on it. The rest, there's a million questions, but to sum it up and give you guys an idea of how to start, hopefully that gives you some things to think about that you didn't already know.
Ask questions, check reviews, interview agents or agent. If you've looked at reviews and you're like, oh, I think that I'm going to call Tisha, call me. It'll be great. Call me, but call me and ask me these questions. If you don't like the answers that I give you to the questions, find the next one on the list and call and talk to them.
Sure. Yep. I agree. So, well, if you have any questions that weren't addressed here, you can always watch the show and throw them in the comments. We'll do what we can, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how to start that process if you didn't already know. If you did already know, maybe it's some new ideas that you hadn't thought about already. In an ever-changing market and more realtors out there with signs and names you've never heard of before, it can be confusing. And hopefully that we've eased that process a little bit. And so until next time, thanks for tuning in. Tisha, thanks for coming.
See you guys.
And see you again next time.